JSB Talks Digital Transformation.
Hello and welcome to JSB Talks Digital, the podcast for marketers, digital change agents, and those of you bringing your skills into the digital age. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke, and this podcast is brought to you by Digital Training Institute. In this, the third in a series of special shows on digital transformation, I look at how politics is being transformed in the digital age. So coming up in today's episode, I have a digital transformation conversation with Craig Dwyer, fellow with the Social Change Initiative. In shoutouts, 3 political campaigns using social media to best effect. In JSB's column, leveraging social media for political communications and voter engagement. And find out what social media tool I used during a public meeting on Brexit.
Digital Transformation Conversation.
I am delighted to be joined on today's show by Craig Dwyer, a fellow with the Social Change Initiative. Craig is conducting research on using social media as an effective tool in campaigning for social change. Craig was previously the social media director for the Yes Equality campaign for civil marriage equality in Ireland. Craig, you are very welcome to JSB Talks Digital Transformation. Thanks for joining me.
And thanks so much for having me, Joanne. Looking forward to it.
So first of all, tell us about your current position with Social Change Initiative. I believe they're an international not-for-profit organisation.
They are indeed, yeah. So the Social Change Initiative, their mission is to enhance the effectiveness of activism and progressive social change. And they have a number of different initiatives that they roll out, but one of those is a fellowship programme. So I am kind of one of those fellows. So they just provide the opportunities for activists and those kind of working towards social change and human rights to broaden their skills and effectiveness. So as part of my fellowship, as you say, I'm going to be looking at how to use social media to campaign for social change. And so what that will involve is I will be kind of reflecting and documenting everything that we've done through the marriage equality referendum in terms of our social media strategy. And then, I'll be using the referendum almost as a case study. And then what I'll be doing is looking at other social change movements around the world and how they use social media to kind of see what works, what maybe doesn't work, what works here, what doesn't work there, with the idea of coming up with like a model or a framework that campaigning groups going forward can then use and implement as part of their wider strategy.
So I think we have a lot in common. I've written extensively on how social media is changing the narrative of public sector discourse from government to policing, education and health. And of course, you've looked and are going to be looking at the Yes Equality campaign and that now famous marriage referendum on social media. Do you think that social media in itself played a significant role in the eventual result?
I do. I think it played a huge role, not only in the results, but in the campaign as a whole. I knew from the outset, in the early days when we were planning the campaign, that social media was going to play a big part in this. When you thought about where our kind of like target audiences were, we knew that a lot of our support would have been from like the younger demographics, and a lot of those were on social media. So, it was just kind of, and then, seeing kind of like other campaigns from like the Obama campaign abroad, like how it can be used. So I really thought that it was going to play a big role. And thankfully, as the campaign went on, we saw that it did. It just gained more and more momentum as the campaign progressed. We started with the Register to Vote campaign on social media. We used it as a way of kind of reaching all of our target audiences right around the country. And then, as I said, as the campaign progressed, it just kind of grew and grew. But not only was it a tool, to communicate our key messages, I think where it really proved its mettle was in terms of mobilising and organising. There was 60 plus Yes Equality groups all around the country, from Yes Equality Dublin 7 to Yes Equality Ballinasloe. And a lot of those originated from Facebook groups, Facebook pages, and then people were joining those, and then they organised a meeting. So that's how these bases were growing and building right across the country. And then as we moved through the campaign, these groups were using Twitter and WhatsApp to create groups around informing people when they were going canvassing. It became as easy as sending a tweet saying, we're meeting at this shopping centre at this time tomorrow evening, and then people were turning up in their numbers to go out canvassing. So where it really worked, I suppose, was the online really complemented all of kind of the offline activity that was being done as well.
And I think one of the successes, and probably one of the main successes, is that while there were 60 groups peppered across the country, you all had one simple and consistent message. And sometimes I think that people miss that simple point when it comes to social media communications.
Yeah, I 100% would agree with that statement. And we were very clear with that from the outset, that we were kind of setting the tone and the agenda of the conversation. And if I think back, I remember back to when the issue of marriage equality was being kind of debated in the Constitutional Convention back in 2013. If you went on Twitter at that time, it's the language being used was just, I knew that it couldn't be a part of the referendum campaign. It was just, we were trying to create a campaign that people wanted to be a part of. If you think civil marriage is about joy and happiness, and we wanted the campaign to reflect that. So tone was going to be essential throughout. People needed to be able to connect with the campaign at whatever level. And I think that was one of the main successes of the campaign, is that we managed to not only establish but maintain that positive tone throughout.
And what's also interesting is that your grouping, correct me if I'm mistaken, but you were largely non-political and had non-political backgrounds. Yeah.
That's you're 100% right there. So Equality was made up of three different NGOs. So it was Glen, the Gay and Lesbian Equality Network, Marriage Equality, and the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. So those three organisations came together working towards the one common goal. And we were completely independent of any political party. As we were a grassroots organisation, almost like a pop-up political party, if you will, and leveraged all the support from the political parties and from, trade unions, civil society organisations, student groups, all of that, leveraged all their support, but we were, I suppose, independent in that sense.
So that leads me to the question and my wonderings if governments, politicians and head of public sector organisations are reluctant to give digital communications the merit it deserves. In your experience, is the fear of not knowing transferring to a mindset of, oh, sure, well, it's not all that important after all, is it, social media?
Yes, that's something that I would come up against every now and again, and it's almost, and I even remember in the early days of the campaign, speaking to one of the more senior people involved, and I was saying, social media now is going to be huge, it's going to play a big role, and it was almost like, oh yeah, that thing over there, it was like, no, this is all going to be about, the ground campaign and knocking on the doors. I was like, yes, completely, and that is like the canvassing efforts around the country went a huge way towards delivering that 62%, yes, but social media can help to drive that, and I think that's just what I was trying to demonstrate is, look, if we put value behind this, we will see the return for it, and bring it, take it from that, oh yeah, that thing over there, and bring it right into the middle and have it complementing all of your different efforts from communications to mobilization to fundraising, and then if you put in that effort, you will get the return for it then. So, and even since then, I'm still, that would be my mantra around it, is, you need to bring it right into the center of all your activities.
So with more than half the world's population now under 30 years of age and consumption of news and campaign-based information dominating social networks, how do you think the narrative of digital truth versus fake news will play out? Do you think echo chambers are merely a symptom of the digital revolution and the communications age in transition, so that we're, not everybody is sure about all this digital age communications thing?
I think the key word that you used there was transition. So I think we probably are in this period of transition now, where so even in the aftermath of the referendum here, social media was being championed as, this was great and look at how amazing it was so positive and all of that. And the message, the tone, everything. But now, after post-Brexit and post-Trump, it's like the narrative is a bit different. It's like, oh, look, social media is awful and it's leading to the spread of fake news, So I think we're still trying to figure our way throughout this all, but we are in that period of transition. I think what we just need to remember is that it's just like social media is a tool, so we just kind of need to use it properly. But I think what we will see, if you think, what I try and compare to is, like streaming online. If you think of music, and people used to be illegally downloading Napster and wherever they were getting their music from online. But now, that's starting to change again. People are gone back to Spotify, and that's where the reliable kind of source, and they're getting their music from there. You think of streaming online. People were, illegally downloading movies and all that, but now we're seeing a shift back to Netflix, and that's where people are getting their content from. So I think we will see the same with news, as more and more of these kind of fake news sites are populating people's feeds. But I think what people will do, they'll start to go back to the legacy publishers and the name, the news brands that they know and recognize.
Let's turn our attention to the American elections of last November, because you've been writing about it recently on the journal.ie. So this week I had the opportunity to ask a few questions of our own Minister for Foreign Affairs, Charlie Flanagan, and I asked him about his view on digital communications and how it may be swaying the political narrative and swaying voters. However, he didn't share my opinion, and he says that while he acknowledged the role of social media, he felt traditional politics was at play in the result of the US elections and the election of Donald Trump, and also in the result of the Brexit campaign. What's your own views on this, Craig?
I suppose I would agree with Minister Flanagan to a certain point. Traditional politics is always going to be the biggest player in the room, if you will. Those kind of canvassing efforts, people's long-standing political beliefs, they're the policies that are put forward, all of that. Traditional politics is going to remain. But I think that, again, going back to what we were saying earlier about the value that you're putting onto the role that social media is playing, there's no doubt about it, especially in American politics and in campaigning. Social media is now hardwired into campaigns across the Atlantic. They're hiring dedicated staff, huge teams to work on social media, creating content, all of that. So I think it is they're certainly putting the value on it. And we can't say that'll be a question for the political scientists as to what impact it had on the results. When you're seeing research which suggests that, I don't know what the percentage is now, but a large percentage of the American population were getting their information from social media platforms, that is suggesting that it is playing a role in helping people come to a certain conclusion about something. So yes, traditional politics is going to remain. It's a huge player, but social media is just growing more and more, and I think we're only going to see that increase in further elections to come.
So let's talk briefly about all that information we're getting from social media. As we know, 80% of people only read a headline on the internet and then they move on. What do you think is the challenge, or indeed the opportunity, for deeper and more critical thinking and opinion of an already overexposed population to content shock?
Yeah, I think content shock is an issue at the moment. I don't know if issue is the right word, but it's definitely something that has to be examined and looked at properly. If you think about it, like we're in this 24-hour news cycle now. You know, people's attention spans are ever decreasing, so it's hard to almost like break out of that constant stream. So that's why people are consuming so much information, not like from news publishers, from brands, you know, right throughout. So it's hard to avoid that, I suppose, just giving the kind of the environment that we live in now. But I think what people will do is, and I think where the onus is on people to go back and seek out more information about a certain issue or topic that they're seeing. You know, so you're never going to be able to, say, bring them from a headline to like an in-depth knowledge, like, you know, all of the time. But I think you just put the onus back on the person that, like, you know, if you want more opinion and analysis, you're going to have to dig that bit deeper and go to, back to those reliable sources. But, you know, it's something that I think people will be concerned about and focusing on, especially with regards to the role that social media plays in that in the coming months and years.
So finally, Craig, I think you're well placed to give some advice here. What would you say to public sector organisations or indeed heads of state seeking to transform and iterate their communication strategies in the digital age?
I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the value that you put onto it. You have to fully recognise the potential that social media can yield for whatever business that you're involved in. You know, you need to bring it right into the centre. If any kind of campaign or communications or ongoing activities that you have coming up, if you can, in the process of developing the strategy around that, if you can hardwire social media into that, I think you will see a much bigger return for it. You know, even in terms of kind of fundraising or any communications, just really acknowledge the role that it can have. And I think once you do that, I think you will see the benefits and the rewards then.
Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on JSB Talks Digital Transformation. If you want to follow Craig on Twitter, which I highly recommend that you do, go over to @Dwyer Craig. And Craig, I'm sure we will talk again about other social media and maybe policing matters. So thanks a million.
Thanks a million. I look forward to it.
Shoutouts.
In this part of the show, I give shout-outs to brands, organisations or individuals whose work online is worth talking about. In this episode, I'm giving shout-outs to 3 political campaigns using social media to great effect.
1.
Global Ambitions is a hashtag launched by Enterprise Ireland in the wake of Brexit. Their executive director, Kevin Sherry, told a public meeting recently that they wanted to showcase the strong sense of ambition among Ireland's startup community who are looking to break into new markets. In fact, Enterprise Ireland is aiming to increase Irish exports to €26 billion per year, or 67% of all exports outside of the UK by 2020.
2.
The EPP group in the European Parliament are using the hashtag DiscoverEU to promote their Interrail campaign. They are using social media to garner support for the initiative of a free Interrail ticket for every European on their 18th birthday, with the aim of strengthening the European identity of young people. Their Facebook page, Discover EU, has also hit 50,000 likes.
3.
There's no doubt that the Brexit campaign on social media left the Remain camp in a bit of a social media stir. 30 weeks of data from Instagram analysing over 18,000 users and 30,000 posts indicated that not only were there twice as many Brexit supporters on Instagram, but they were also 5 times more active than Remain activists. The same pattern could be found on Twitter, where they found that the Leave camp outnumbered the Remain camp 7-1. The online momentum of the Leave camp was equally evident in the support they received from the online community. If you notice a political campaign on social media that has impressed you, please let me know. Send me a tweet to @tweetsbyJSB.
JSB Talks.
Leveraging social media for political communications and voter engagement. If you are working towards getting elected or indeed re-elected, you need to understand how social media can ramp up your election campaign. It is possible to use social media to manage your online reputation, drive brand profile, increase voter engagement, generate media opportunities, communicate your campaign manifesto, as well as to clarify misinformation and digital untruths. We live in the digital age, an era where we run much of our lives from a device. Did you know 80% of the EU population uses Facebook daily, or that in Ireland we spent a third more time on mobile devices than the EU average? On average, we spend 2 hours per day on the internet, and that's conservative for some of us. Running an election campaign or holding onto your seat while in office means communicating, engaging, conversing, and debating with the electorate. It is your responsibility to reach them, and of course, you are probably already committed to the election poster, knocking on doors, and visiting workplaces. There are more people online and using social networking sites than there were in the previous election campaigns, and we are more digitally savvy. We now live in the smartphone era where life happens in your pocket and conversations take place on a mobile device, in real time, all the time. Can you afford not to speak to your voters on social media? From hashtags to social and live video, social advertising, visual storytelling, online PR, analytics and insights, the business of political communications has changed the narrative of many nations. Therefore, I have developed a system of tracking how you can convert social media fans into voters. JSB's political marketing funnel shows you how consistent conversations and engagement can lead to voter loyalty and advocacy. If you want to learn more about it, then please do get in touch. If you want to have a digital transformation conversation with me, simply drop me an email to joanne@digitaltraining.ie. Everything starts with a story or a conversation.
Social media tool of the week.
This week I attended a public meeting on Brexit, which I was live tweeting from. As you may know, tweets with images get 313% more engagement. So I discovered the tool VI Tweet. The tool allows you to add a visual background to anything you tweet, automatically transforming any of your hashtag tweets into a stunning quote card. Top tip, however, do not include any media links or images in your tweet. Ensure it is just text. Have a look at the blog post associated with this podcast to see my examples. To connect your Twitter account to the tool, simply log on to vitweet.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to the third episode of JSB Talks Digital Transformation. I hope you are enjoying this special series. As always, I'll have everything discussed on today's show on my blog at digitaltraining.ie. If you or your organisation is involved in digital transformation, then please get in touch and we can discuss having you on the show. Drop me an email to joanne@digitaltraining.ie and write podcast in the subject line. To ensure you never miss an episode of JSB Talks Digital, make sure you subscribe on your smartphone on iTunes or on Stitcher. You can also subscribe on SoundCloud. I'd love your feedback on this series, so be sure to tweet me your thoughts to @tweetsbyJSB or post a comment on our Facebook page, Digital Training Institute. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke. This is JSB Talks Digital Transformation. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.
JSB Talks Digital Transformation.